Imagine for a second. Deliberately altering the way you physically view the natural world, like changing your artistic eye or even just changing the way you take a photograph.
Right.
Not because it creates a more, beautiful image for you, but simply to appease the data requirements of a machine.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's happening right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today on this deep dive, we were looking at a potted houseplant. I know it sounds basic, but bear with me. We are going to extract the really profound insights hidden inside a single, seemingly simple gardening journal entry.
Yeah, we're going to show you how a few paragraphs about dirt and leaves can actually hold a mirror up to our own human nature.
Let's get right into it. What are we looking at today?
So we're analyzing a post titled Notes on Gardening Part 896. It was published today, actually, May 16th, 2026, by an author named Ang.
Okay.
And on the surface, it reads like a really casual update about a specific plant in their collection. It's the Lavender Sorrel, or Oxalis Barrelieri.
I'm just going to stick with lavender sorrel for my own sake.
Fair enough. But beneath that surface, the text is this remarkable microcosm of patience. It exposes the illusion of control that we try to exert over nature.
Yeah?
And it documents this fascinating, almost invisible shift in how artificial intelligence is actively rewiring human behavior.
And that intersection of the physical and the digital is what makes this so compelling. For you listening, whether your idea of gardening is managing some sprawling greenhouse full of rare orchids or, just trying to keep a single plastic succulent looking somewhat presentable on your desk.
Which is most of us, honestly.
Right. But the underlying philosophy of this journal entry, it applies directly to you. It is about how we interact with the world, how we attempt to categorize it, and how we actually observe the things right in front of us.
Totally.
So let's look at the opening of Ang's post. They're writing about the return of this lavender sorrel. And immediately we're hit with this really deep sense of history.
Yeah, it's not a new plant.
No, this isn't a fresh purchase from a local hardware store. The author notes it was collected from the wild, quote, so many moons ago. And they actually deliberately reference a much older journal entry, part 491, to anchor the timeline of this plant.
And that kind of documented continuity, it's incredibly rare in our current digital landscape. We're essentially stepping into the middle of a very long, very quiet relationship between a human and a wild organism.
It's kind of beautiful, actually.
It is. The gardener took something untamed, brought it into a domesticated space, and then simply waited. Think about the sheer volume of life that happens between journal entry 491 and entry 896.
That's a lot of waiting.
Right. This is a practice defined by a time frame that moves at the speed of biology, not the speed of an internet connection.
Okay, let's unpack this waiting period, because the plant has finally bloomed again. But the mechanism behind that bloom is what I found so relatable.
Yeah, the author's pretty honest about it.
Very honest. They admit they didn't actually pay much attention to the plant recently. They didn't, hit it with hyper-engineered fertilizers or install expensive full-spectrum grow lights.
No, they didn't do any of that.
They merely transplanted it to a larger pot and decided to let nature take its course. And the result? The plant is thriving. It's blooming beautifully. It's a brilliant analog for how we handle complex problems in our everyday lives.
Oh, absolutely. Because the human instinct is always to micromanage the problem, right?
Always.
We assume that applying more pressure, more resources or more direct focus is going to force a result. But biology often requires space, not pressure.
Right, space to breathe.
Exactly. By moving the plant to a larger pot, the gardener provided the foundational environment, like the literal space for the roots to expand, and then they removed their own ego from the equation.
Which is incredibly hard to do. If you are staring down a massive creative roadblock or some logistical nightmare at work, the hardest thing to do is just walk away.
Oh, it feels unnatural. You feel like you're giving up.
Yeah, but giving a problem room to breathe, putting it into a larger pot by, say, taking a walk or letting your subconscious chew on it overnight, that is usually when the solution naturally reveals itself.
The wild bloom.
Exactly, the wild bloom. But when the author actually looks at this blooming plant, they aren't just looking at the flower. They start describing the distinct morphology of the foliage.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that the text highlights this deep appreciation for the form itself. The author specifically notes the distinctive leaves of the lavender sorrel. they describe them as trifoliate, which just means they're grouped in threes and ovate, meaning they possess an egg-like shape.
Grouped in threes and egg shape, got it.
Right. And so we have this organism that was allowed to grow completely organically, yet the human observer is marveling at its strict, almost mathematical geometry. The rule of threes, the perfect sweeping oval boundaries of the leaf.
It's a gorgeous paradox, really.
Yeah.
The wildness of the plant is being expressed through this highly structured, almost architectural biology. And it requires a level of observation that goes way beyond just a casual glance. You don't notice the geometry of a leaf unless you are truly looking at it.
You really have to zoom in.
Right. But of course, we're dealing with a gardener here. And once a gardener sees a geometric form they love, that perfect balance of wildness and structure, they inevitably want to replicate it.
Oh, yeah. The desire to multiply is the driving engine of any botanical collection.
For sure.
And the text transitions really smoothly here from admiring the bloom to the mechanical reality of propagation. Because, a flower is beautiful to a human, but its biological purpose is entirely reproductive.
It has a job to do.
Right. And once that bloom begins to fade, the gardener is faced with the choice of how to harness that reproductive cycle. The author actually outlines 3 distinct strategies for multiplying the lavender sorrel.
Right, so they mentioned waiting for the spent flowers to dry out so they can manually harvest the seeds. They also note that taking physical cuttings works just as well.
Classic gardening techniques.
Very hands-on. But then there's a third option tucked into the text. They write, or I could simply let the plant self-seed.
Which sounds completely natural.
On paper, yeah. It sounds like the ultimate extension of their earlier philosophy. Just let the plant drop its own seeds into the soil and do the work itself.
Right.
Yet the author immediately expresses hesitation. They admit that while self-seeding works for most species in their collection, it makes it rather hard to identify them during the seedling phase.
Yeah, they really don't like that phase.
So what does this all mean? It sounds to me like the author is terrified of their own hobby. Like if they really wanted nature to take its course, they'd just let the seeds fall. Why the sudden, desperate need to control the seedlings?
Well, I think you're making a massive assumption there about what actually constitutes nature in this scenario.
Oh, how so?
I'd argue that putting a wild plant in a plastic pot on a windowsill is inherently unnatural from the very start.
Okay, that's a fair point.
The moment a human brings a plant inside, they've removed its natural predators, they've isolated it from chaotic weather patterns, and eliminated its competition for resources. The gardener is the absolute architect of that space.
They're playing God a little bit.
Exactly. So leaving a curated indoor environment to chaos isn't natural. It's honestly a dereliction of the gardener's self-appointed duty.
But the plant dropping seeds into the dirt beneath it is literally how it survives in the wild.
Yeah.
It's the unbroken chain of biology. Why does the human mind reject that process just because there's a roof overhead?
Because gardening is an act of curation, not just passive observation. It is a human imposing order on the natural world. And let's look at the biology of why the author is so frustrated here.
Right, the seedling phase.
Yeah. When a seed first germinates and breaks through the soil, it pushes up its initial seed leaves. Biologically, these are called cotyledons.
Cotyledon.
Right. And for the vast majority of plant species, those cotyledons look almost completely identical. They are just generic, rounded green shoots. You do not see the plant's true leaves like those distinctive trifoliate ovate structures an author loves until the plant matures further.
So for weeks, the gardener is just staring at a generic green fleck in the dirt.
Precisely. The gardener is trapped in this frustrating waiting game. When the author talks about harvesting seeds from spent flowers or taking physical cuttings with a sterilized blade, those are acts of active human intervention.
Right, they're taking control.
Yes, they require intention and documentation. By doing those things, the gardener ensures the identity of the organism. They know exactly what they planted, what pot it is in, and what label belongs on it.
And self-seeding.
Self-seeding represents a total surrender to chaos. The seeds fall where they may, blowing into neighboring pots or mixing with dormant seeds in the soil.
The anxiety of the unknown sprout. You look down at this tiny green shoot, and you have absolutely no idea if it's the prized, wild-collected lavender sorrel or just some random aggressive weed that blew through the screen door.
In human beings, we hate that.
We really do. The human brain craves categorization. We want a neatly organized catalog. An unidentified seedling isn't a miracle of life to a curator. It's an unsolved mystery that threatens the integrity of the whole collection.
And that tension, the desire for a wild aesthetic versus the human need for cataloged control, that's the central dilemma of the text.
Yeah.
And because the author despises the difficulty of identifying these plants during that chaotic seedling phase, they've had to adapt their behavior, which brings us to the most significant revelation in the journal entry.
The pivot.
Right. The difficulty of identifying self-seeded plants serves as the logical catalyst for a profound technological solution.
Because the author doesn't stop gardening. They don't give up on the idea of propagation. Instead, they completely change the way they document the physical world around them. The text reveals a recent, deliberate shift in their photography style.
And the methodology they describe is crucial here.
Yeah.
They write that instead of merely focusing on the flower or, taking a wide atmospheric shot of the overall plant, they now purposefully take specific close-up shots of both the flowers and the leaves.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The reasoning behind that shift is what absolutely stopped me in my tracks. They are photographing the leaves because the leaf is critical for accurate identification through AI.
Yep, artificial intelligence.
That is such a massive, unexpected leap from the dirt under the nails reality of potting soil. I mean, the analogy that immediately came to mind for me was biometric data.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Think about how we usually look at nature, or even how we look at people, right? The bloom of a plant is a flashy outfit. It's a bright, colorful, attention-grabbing spectacle.
It's meant to be seen.
Exactly. It's the aesthetic reward that we naturally want to frame and post online. But the flower is fleeting.
The flower is a temporary reproductive display. The leaf, however, is the structural foundation.
Right. The leaf is the passport. It's the biometric data. The author told us earlier how specific the geometry of the leaf is: trifoliate, ovate, grouped in mathematical threes.
Very specific parameters.
Yeah. The flower is the flashy outfit you wear to the party, but the leaf is your fingerprint. It's the hard, structural data that the AI actually needs to solve the identity puzzle of that chaotic little seedling.
Exactly.
If you just feed an artificial intelligence a picture of a generic pink flower, the algorithm might return 100 different plant species. But if you feed it the specific mathematical geometry of the leaf, the AI can cut through the biological chaos and hand the gardener the control and categorization they crave.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really need to explore how AI actually processes that imagery, because it explains the author's behavioral shift entirely.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, human vision is deeply tied to evolutionary dopamine responses.
Right.
We are drawn to bright colors and high contrast, which is exactly why flowers evolved to look the way they do. They're designed to hijack the visual systems of pollinators, and humans just fall for the same trick.
We're basically just big bees.
Pretty much. We see the bloom, we feel the aesthetic pleasure, and we take the photo. But a machine learning algorithm doesn't experience aesthetic pleasure.
Right, doesn't care if it's pretty.
Exactly. A neural network processes an image through edge detection, pattern recognition, and geometric relationships.
The AI just strips away all the romance.
Completely. The AI doesn't care how beautiful the shade of lavender is. It is looking for the mathematical ratio of the oval shape. It is counting the grouping of the leaflets. It requires the foundational structural data to make a definitive match.
Wow.
So what we are witnessing in this journal entry is a digital tool forcing a change in physical human behavior. The gardener has deliberately altered their own artistic eye. They are no longer framing a shot to capture the emotion or the beauty of the moment for another human being. They are framing the shot to satisfy the data parsing requirements of a machine.
It's a seamless, almost invisible blending of timelines. I mean, you have this ancient hobby that connects us directly to our agrarian past, literally digging in the dirt, collecting wild plants so many moons ago, waiting for a root system to establish itself in a larger pot.
Right, the oldest human activities.
Yeah. And yet, the way this person interacts with that ancient practice is being actively shaped by the cutting-edge algorithms of the future. The AI needs a clear shot of the biological fingerprint, so the human functionally becomes the data gatherer, adjusting their camera lens until the machine is satisfied.
And think about the implication of that relationship. The tool was theoretically adopted to serve the human, right?
Yeah.
To help the gardener identify the chaotic seedlings that were causing them so much frustration.
That was the goal.
But in practice, the human is adapting their physical habits to serve the limitations of the tool.
Yeah, but maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but I actually think there is a massive silver lining to this dynamic.
Oh yeah. What's the silver lining?
It changes the nature of observation itself. Earlier in the post, before AI was even mentioned, the author was marveling at those same leaves. They loved the trifoliate ovate
They
structures.
did, yeah.
So, by forcing the gardener to photograph the leaves for identification purposes, the AI is effectively forcing the human to look closer at the structural foundation of the plant, rather than just being distracted by the pretty bloom.
That is a really fascinating way to frame it. The machine is demanding forensic attention.
Yes, it slows the human down. We live in a world where it's so easy to just snap a photo of the flashy flower, post it, and move on to the next thing.
Right, the infinite scroll.
Exactly. But having to lean in, manipulate the lighting, find the perfect grouping of three egg-shaped leaves, and focus the macro lens on their geometric edges, that process completely changes your physical relationship with the object in front of you.
It demands presence.
It does. The algorithm is forcing us to appreciate the architecture, not just the decoration. It is inadvertently making the human a much better observer of the things they already claim to love.
Because a casual glance simply does not suffice anymore. The machine requires deep looking. And the fact that this profound shift in visual philosophy is happening quietly on a Tuesday within the confines of a single potted lavender sorrel, it really shows just how deeply these technologies are integrating into the mundane fabrics of our lives.
It really is an incredible journey when you step back and look at the full arc of what we've unpacked today from Aang's tech.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. We started with a wild, untamed plant collected years ago, finally blooming just because a human had the wisdom to put it in a larger pot and step out of the way.
Right.
We explore that intense friction between the desire for a natural ecosystem and the gardener's absolute hatred of the uncontrolled chaos that comes with self-seeded, unidentified sprouts.
The classic gardener's dilemma.
Exactly. And finally, we arrived at this striking image of a modern human adjusting their camera lens, altering how they view the biological world, just to feed better data to an artificial intelligence.
It perfectly distills the modern condition, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we desperately want to remain connected to the wildness of nature, but we demand that it be neatly categorized and cataloged. And to achieve that impossible balance, we are increasingly turning our natural spaces into data sets for machines to manage.
So for you listening right now, I want you to take this philosophy out of the windowsill and apply it to your own life.
Yeah, zoom out a bit.
Think about whatever garden it is that you tend to every day. It might be your career trajectory, a massive creative project, or a specific field of study you're trying to master. In your garden, are you only taking pictures of the flashy flowers?
The surface level stuff.
Right. Are you only focused on the big promotions, the viral moments, the finished artwork, the things that give you that immediate dopamine hit? Or are you taking the time to zoom in and observe the structural leaves?
The things that hold it all up.
The daily habits, the quiet foundational skills, the hidden geometries that actually define what you are building. Are you capturing the whole picture, or are you just distracted by the bloom?
And to take that a step further, consider the lingering question embedded in the very act of taking that photo.
Which is?
If a gardener must fundamentally change how they document the physical world in order for an artificial intelligence to understand it, who is actually teaching whom?
Oh, wow.
Right. We operate under the assumption that we are simply training the AI to recognize the plant, but by demanding highly specific visual data, by requiring us to seek out the trifoliate, the ovate, the easily overlooked structures of reality, is the machine ultimately training us.
Such a wild thought.
Is the AI teaching humanity how to look past the superficial and observe the natural world with a precision we had almost forgotten?
Man, the next time you walk past a simple potted plant sitting quietly in a room, you might just realize you are looking at the vanguard of a whole new way of seeing. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep looking closer, and we will see you next time.